Today's video is going to discuss how the Crusades impacted Western European culture and established the Renaissance. So, the Crusades are going to stimulate trade, and they do so because of the increased contact with the Middle Eastern cultures, with the merchants who traveled along behind the crusading knights. This trade that we talked about as a really big system during the Roman Empire and throughout sort of all the African and Indian and Asian cultures, it sort of falls apart with the disunity of the European Middle Ages. And with the Crusades, Europeans come into more contact with the cultures of the Middle East. And so we're going to help to create even more trade. There is something called a guild system, and a guild system is an organization of people with the same job. They have the same role in society. So maybe you are a member of the barrel maker guild, or the shoemaking guild, or the sword making guild, or the basket weavers. And they set particular rules into place for how your product needed to be created, what quality of standards your product needed to maintain, how much money you should be paid, what prices you could be selling your product for on the world market, and also for the area in which you work. If you notice, a guild system is very similar to the labor unions of the 19th and 20th centuries, only they are obviously ancient and they have a little less government interference. They start off as a way for merchants to be able to keep the prices high, but then it turns into a system in which artisans and crafters are going to be protecting themselves and their craft, and also to be able to teach apprentices, to teach younger generations how to produce their products. And if I take this picture and I make it a lot bigger, you can see that there are different levels. There are 3 levels to the guild system. There's an apprentice, which was the first step, and you were basically the low man on the totem pole, and you were working for several years. This particular slide shows that you're training for 2 to 7 years in order to learn your craft, and you had all kinds of very strict rules that you had to follow. Then you became a journeyman, where you were sort of you're actually practicing your craft. You're a licensed person who's a little more free than an apprentice, but you had to work and make what's called your masterpiece. It was your best example of the most amazing piece of craftsmanship you can produce, and then you submit it to the master craftsman in order to get it approved for you to become a master. As a master, then you could own your own business, and you could start the system all over again. You would have apprentices and journeymen working for you, and you would be spreading out your information. If you notice up at the top, you have a whole series of really positive things that the guild service would give to the community and also to the members of the guild. It was very beneficial to belong to the guild. Europeans are going to flock towards Middle Eastern products that they didn't have access to before, like textiles and spices and indigo, which is a dye, and the windmills and the water wheels, the inventions of the Middle Eastern culture that we've talked about in the past. They are going to start making, within the guild system, better examples of European craftsmanship in order to have something to trade with the Middle Eastern traders of essentially the Ottoman Empire and the traders in the Byzantine Empire. They're also going to talk about credit and the use of credit. Now, when we talk about credit, we're talking about loaning money or spending money that you don't yet have, with the anticipation that you will have it in the future. It's the predecessor to early banking systems. And during the Renaissance, there are going to be particular families that have a lot of money, are going to start doing their own loaning. The Medici family in Italy is very famous for being a big loaning and crediting and patronage family. So wealthy merchants, like, for instance, the Medicis, are going to start dominating the economy because they're the people with the money. They're the people making the goods, and they're the people involved in trade. They offer credit as a way to keep people from carrying around, sacks full of gold or what have you. And they expand the trade capacity of Europe, and they also expand how much money is in circulation. Because, think about the way that coins are made. They're literal actual pieces of silver and gold that are minted. So they're actually going to expand the opportunity to have money. The Medicis are definitely the most famous patrons and the wealthiest family in Italy. The images that you see, this top right-hand corner is, if I make this picture a little bigger, this man is one of the Medicis, who is the one who creates one of the very first international banking systems. And he was just a very lucky rich man who was able to create his own bank. The bottom picture is actually the Medici family crest. The other issue that we have that arises during the Renaissance is what's called usury, or the practice of lending money at very high interest rates. Now, we have interest rates in the United States. We have interest rates globally. Interest is what's charged you as you take out a loan. So it's the percentage that you must pay back based on the fact that you're borrowing money from somebody. It's how the people who loan money make money back. It's the whole reason you loan money in the first place. So the problem is that these are very exorbitant rates. These are super duper high interest rates, and the Catholic Church and really Christian doctrine in general is very anti-lending money. There's always that quote, neither a borrower nor a lender be, and it's the concept that you're not supposed to borrow money that you don't have. You're supposed to make do with what you have. But banks and merchants, they were continuing to lend money, and people wanted that ability. I mean, who doesn't want to be able to buy something? And if there's money available, they want to get it now. I mean, I wouldn't have a house, my husband wouldn't have a pickup truck if it wasn't for the ability to loan money. And so the problem is that Italy is going to begin to become more secularized. Italy, the heart of the Roman Empire, is going to be more non-religious. It's going to be more privatized because people are turning away from the church in the Renaissance and towards the merchants and the government that is allowing them to loan money. So, our last little bit is about the economy. We started using Arabic numerals in our relationship with trade with the Middle Eastern cultures. We've talked a little bit about that, how the Romans had the system with the letters and the numbers, but the Muslims had more of an alphabet system for numbers. And as European merchants began working with the Middle Eastern merchants, you could tell that it's so much easier to keep records when you're keeping records in the Muslim system. So Arabic numerals come into play in Europe as a result of the trade that was established during the Crusades and carried through the Renaissance. This bottom picture, if I make it a little bigger, you probably have seen one of these before. This is an example of an abacus, which was used to count numbers. It was a way in order to keep track of your records. And then this particular piece, if I can make it a little bigger and you ignore the highlighting, this just shows you the way that numbers looked. It was a whole series. If you check along the column number 7, you see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Those are obviously the versions that we use. It says in number 7, modern. It's that second word. But these are all the different variations that had come about in various other languages. If you see, there's several that use the same symbol for 8. You can see the similarities in the 6 in this column. So you can see where we get a lot of our information from. All right, that does it for the set of notes on the impact of the Crusades on trade and the economy. As always, if you have any questions, please send me messages or ask me in class.